A special thank you to each of our subscribers who make this channel possible. Here's today's story. In a landmark agreement reached at the COP29 climate summit in Baku, Azerbaijan, nearly 200 countries have committed to significantly increasing financial support for developing nations to combat the devastating impacts of climate change. The deal, however, has been met with skepticism and disappointment from many participants who argue that the pledged funds fall short of what is truly needed. The agreement, finalized at the end of the two-week summit, stipulates that wealthy nations will provide at least $300 billion annually by 2035, a substantial increase from the previous target of $100 billion. This funding is intended to assist developing countries in transitioning to cleaner energy sources and adapting to the increasingly severe effects of climate change. Despite this positive step, independent experts estimate that developing nations require at least $1.3 trillion per year to effectively address climate-related challenges. This figure encompasses the investments necessary for energy transitions, disaster preparedness, and climate resilience, which are crucial for keeping global temperature rise below the critical threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Negotiations leading to the agreement were fraught with tension and disagreement, reflecting the stark divide between developed and developing nations. At one point, discussions were on the verge of collapse, highlighting the difficulties in reaching a consensus on climate financing. The election of Donald Trump just days before the summit added another layer of complexity, as many feared he would undermine the commitments made in Baku. In a bid to secure a deal, rich countries ultimately agreed to contribute $50 billion more than initially proposed. However, this compromise has been criticized as inadequate, with many developing nations expressing outrage over what they perceive as fundamental flaws in the financial plan. The current agreement also emphasizes the role of private financing and international lenders, such as the World Bank, in bridging the funding gap. Critics have labeled this approach as an escape clause for wealthy nations, allowing them to shift the burden of financing onto private entities while failing to provide the necessary support directly. The dissatisfaction among developing countries was palpable during the final negotiations, with representatives from the least developed countries, LDC, bloc, and the Alliance of Small Island States walking out in protest against what they deemed an unacceptable draft proposal. They called for more substantial commitments and a greater focus on their specific needs, emphasizing that the current agreement does not adequately address the challenges they face. As the summit concluded, the urgency for action was underscored by the reality that climate change is not a distant threat but a present-day crisis. Developing nations are grappling with severe weather events, rising sea levels, and extreme temperatures, all of which threaten their economies and livelihoods. The promised funding, while a step in the right direction, is far from sufficient to meet these urgent needs. The COP29 summit has highlighted the ongoing struggle for equitable climate financing, revealing the deep-seated tensions between rich and poor nations. As the world grapples with the reality of climate change, the question remains: will the commitments made in Baku be enough to safeguard the future of vulnerable populations worldwide? The answer may lie in the ability of nations to come together and prioritize the urgent need for action over political and economic constraints. That's all for this story. We upload videos every day covering many different subjects, so hit that subscribe button to stay informed. Thanks for watching.